Imagine this, and don't look away. If the kingdom of God is within you, then anyone claiming to stand between you and God loses their job. That single shift, from outside to inside, detonates a whole economy of fear, permission, and control. You weren't told it that way. You were told to wait, to pay, to obey, and maybe, later, receive a pass to heaven. But if the kingdom is here, now, inside your living awareness, the gate is already open, and the gatekeepers are suddenly very nervous. I'm not asking you to believe anything yet. I'm asking you to test a possibility that threatens the system that trained you. What if the most dangerous teaching of Jesus wasn't about rules, but about sovereignty, yours? If that's true, every institution built on selling access to God has a problem, and you have a decision. You can outsource your soul again, or you can take it back. You've felt the contradiction. You were told that holiness lives in buildings, robes, and special hands, but the moments that actually changed you came unannounced. A sudden clarity, a quiet courage, a presence that didn't need witnesses. You didn't buy that. You recognized it. And recognition is the one thing nobody can invoice. This is why the story gets buried under doctrine and threat. If you awaken to what's already in you, fear stops working. Guilt stops working. The script that says, "You are small, we are large, line up and we'll connect you to God," tears down the middle. That script is older than you, and it survives by keeping your eyes pointed outward, toward altars, toward titles, toward a future that never arrives. Meanwhile, the present, where life actually happens, is neglected like a locked room in your own house. So here's the wager of this episode, stated without sugar. You don't need a middleman to meet the divine. Not because you're flawless, but because the meeting place was built into you before anyone could brand it. If that sounds like heresy, good. Heresy is just the name power gives to a truth it can't supervise. You're going to hear lines that were hidden, ideas that were edited out, and a through line that makes sense of the censorship. You won't be asked to chant, breathe in a pattern, or visualize light. You'll be asked to listen, to think, and to notice what rings like a struck bell in your chest. Why was this teaching called dangerous? Because it relocates authority. If the kingdom lives within, forgiveness, transformation, and guidance aren't products. They're events that happen in a person. That makes you unpurchasable. That makes you inconvenient. And inconvenient souls are exactly the ones history tries hardest to discipline. Stay with me, because the next minutes will do what sermons rarely risk. We'll pull the thread. We'll read the sayings that move the kingdom from later to now, from there to here, from them to you. And when we get to the end, I'll give you the conclusion the censors feared you would reach on your own. If you're right about yourself, if that quiet recognition you felt is real, then you are already standing where you were told you could only arrive. The question isn't whether there's a gate. The question is whether you'll keep pretending it's locked. You don't need my opinion, you need the lines themselves. In 1945, near a village called Nag Hammadi, a jar of papyrus codices came out of the sand. Inside were voices that never made it into Sunday readings, voices that speak directly to you. Listen to this. If those who lead you say, "Look, the kingdom is in the sky," then the birds will get there first. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. That isn't a slogan. That is a demolition charge under the idea of holy distance. If the kingdom is within you and around you, then your life is already inside sacred space. You don't apply for entry. You wake up to a reality you're standing in. Another line. The Father's kingdom is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it. Read that again with your own name in it. Spread out, not hidden behind stone, not deferred to after death. Present, misseen. If you've ever felt a moment where the world went suddenly clear for no reason, you've brushed this. You didn't climb a ladder. The fog just thinned. Now hear the escalation. From the gospel called Philip, those who say they will die first and then rise are in error. If they do not first receive the resurrection while they live, when they die, they will receive nothing. That line cancels the business model of postponement. You are not being promised a future prize for perfect behavior. You are being called to a change of state while you are breathing. If that's true, anyone who sells you salvation later is already late. And then the most dangerous thread of all, Mary. In the text bearing her name, Mary speaks of the soul moving past powers with names you recognize in your own day: desire, ignorance, wrath. The soul is challenged and answers back. It doesn't buy a ticket upward. It passes because it knows what it is. That's the scandal. Not contempt for the world, but refusal to let desire and ignorance sit in the judge's chair. The ascent is not an escape from matter. It's an escape from confusion. Do you see the triangle forming around you? One text says the kingdom is here, inside and all around. A second says the awakening must happen now, while alive. A third shows a soul that refuses to be managed by its cravings and confusions. Put them together, and the message to you is surgical. Stop outsourcing your center. Stop postponing your life. Stop letting borrowed noise name your God. You might ask, but were these lines ever meant for me, or just for an elite? Listen closely. If the kingdom is inside of you, who exactly would be excluded? The only way to make this elitist is to reintroduce the very middlemen these texts disarm. The moment you accept that, you hand your eyes back to someone else and call it humility. It isn't humility, it's abdication. You might also ask, isn't this heresy? Heresy is a moving fence. Today's heresy becomes tomorrow's catechism whenever power changes hands. What doesn't move is the test you can run in your own chest. When you hear "spread out upon the earth," something in you knows exactly what that looks like. When you hear "resurrection while you live," something in you remembers a time you felt more alive than your biography. You don't need a credential to recognize that recognition. You just need the nerve to trust it. Notice what these voices never say. They never say, "hate the body." They never say, "flee the world." They never say, "wait for permission." They say the opposite. See clearly, hear, awaken, now. Pass by the powers that live off your confusion. This is not an attack on community or history. It is an attack on monopoly, on the idea that access to the holy can be leased back to you with conditions. If you're feeling the ground tilt, good. That tilt is the point. Because if these lines are even half true, then the center of gravity moves from the platform to the person, from them to you. And once the center moves, everything organized around the old center starts shaking. That shaking is the sound institutions hear when they whisper the word dangerous. Hold that sound. In the next part, we'll name why these voices had to be buried under official readings and authorized lists. Not because they lacked light, but because they turned the lights on where control can't reach, inside you. Power doesn't fear mystery. Power fears access. If the kingdom lives in you, then you don't need a key, a ticket, or a translator. That single implication is enough to make any institution tighten its fists. So the strategy was simple. Centralize the message, standardize the books, professionalize the gate. Call that order, call it orthodoxy, call it whatever you like. The function is the same. Move the center of gravity from your interior life to their authorized platform. You've seen this pattern before. First, diversity gets renamed confusion. Many voices become dangerous. Then a shortlist appears. Approved readings, approved interpretations, approved pathways. You are told the shortlist protects truth, but watch what it actually protects: the right to define access. When a human hierarchy can say, this counts, that doesn't, it can also say who counts and who doesn't. That's not theology, that's logistics. In late antiquity, this logistics hardened into lists. Councils met, creeds were minted, and the library of living Christianity was trimmed to a shelf that fit imperial administration. A bishop's letter famously fixed 27 books as the New Testament. The rest were pushed to the margins as suspect, confusing, or corrupting. Convenient, isn't it, that the texts insisting on present tense awakening within you while alive were the ones most likely to be labeled unhelpful. Now add economics. If salvation is postponed, it can be managed. If the kingdom is elsewhere, travel is required, and travel needs guides, fees, checkpoints. A distant heaven sustains an industry of ladders, rituals you must purchase, offices you must respect, guilt you must carry until someone licensed says you may set it down. But if resurrection must be received while you live, the ladders lose their rungs. You don't remove community or wisdom by saying that, you remove monopoly, and monopoly fights back. Add politics. A faith that speaks one language is easier to weld to an empire than a faith that lets ordinary people claim immediate, unsupervised contact with God. One creed, one canon, one church sounds holy. It is also the perfect slogan for a state that dislikes wildfires of conscience. Standardization stabilizes borders. It also domesticates souls. And here is the most human piece. Leaders are not cartoon villains. Many were absolutely convinced they were saving truth from chaos. But systems do not need villains to drift toward control. They only need incentives. Every bureaucracy learns to preserve itself. Every office learns to defend its function. If your job is to stand at the door, a doctrine that says there is no door is going to feel like an attack, no matter how much light it carries. So the buried texts received a set of labels: Gnostic, heretical, confusing, unedifying. Notice how none of those labels actually refute the claim that the kingdom is within. They sidestep it. They say, dangerous, don't read. They hope you will accept the warning without asking why danger to whom? To you? Or to the structure that needs you to remain a customer? You live with the residue of this strategy even now. You hear that holiness is somewhere else and someone else. You hear that authority sits in a distant office. You hear that maturity is obedience to someone's map. But the moment you stop outsourcing your center, all of that messaging loses voltage. Not because you become reckless, but because you recover responsibility. You stop being managed by borrowed fear. You stop being steered by the threat of exile from a place you already inhabit. This is why the dangerous teaching had to be smothered under lists, edicts, and warnings. It makes you non-compliant in the one-way control cannot tolerate. You stop paying with your life for access to your life. That is the unforgivable sin in any system built on mediation. Hold that line, because the next question is the blade we must take to the fog. What exactly does within mean? Not poetry, not vibes, not denial of the world. If you're going to wager your sovereignty on this, you need a definition that holds under pressure. That's where we go next. You can't build your life on a metaphor. Within has to mean something you can lean on when pressure hits. So let's cut false options first. Within does not mean you invented God. It does not mean you are a little deity floating in your own private universe. It does not cancel history, community, or wisdom. Within means the meeting place, the locus of awareness where grace, truth, and decision actually happen, is not for sale and not assignable to anyone else. If someone cannot step into your consciousness and make your choices for you, and they can't, then the decisive arena of the kingdom is already inside you. That's the scandal, and that's the liberation. Here is a definition you can test. The kingdom within is the awakened center from which you perceive, choose, and love without outsourcing your authority to fear. Everything that follows is just the geometry of that sentence. You don't need incense to see it. You need honesty. First, the perceptual level. Within relocates where you look from. When you live as if the holy is over there or later on, you treat the present as a waiting room. You borrow your eyes from the loudest platform and hope it will announce when God arrives. Meanwhile, you miss what is spread out in front of you. Perception changes the second you stop waiting for permission to notice. You begin to see the difference between noise and signal, between borrowed emotion and real presence, between a life performed and a life lived. That is not mystic fog. That is attention unchained. When your attention unchains, fear loses its favorite handle. Second, the identity level. Within answers the question, who stands at the center when I decide? If you identify as a permanent petitioner, small, guilty, dependent on signatures, then every choice feels like smuggling. If you identify as the place of meeting, the point where the divine addresses the world through a person, then obedience stops being groveling and becomes alignment. You stop chasing validation like oxygen. You stop renting your conscience. You stop trying to impress a sky you do not trust and start acting from a presence you cannot purchase. That identity does not make you arrogant. It makes you responsible. The braver your center, the less you need to coerce anyone else. Third, the ethical level. Within changes the logic of love. If the holy is only outside, love is an order barked from a distant office. If the holy meets you inside, love is recognition. What is in me is also aiming at me from you. That recognition does not excuse harm. It unmasks it. You cannot worship the presence in yourself and despise it in your neighbor without tearing your own house down. Commands turn into consequences. You forgive because rancor suffocates your center. You tell the truth because lies split the meeting place. You practice justice because exploitation is blasphemy against the image you claim to carry. Now guardrails. Saying within is not an insult to community. It is an insult to monopoly. A healthy community confirms what is within you and calls it to maturity. An unhealthy one tries to replace it. Within also isn't an escape hatch from the world. If anything, it removes your excuses. You can't blame the absence of a ritual for your cowardice once you know the doorway is in you. You can't outsource compassion to a platform once you recognize the face in front of you as holy ground. Within shuts down the delay tactics that keep you safely unchanged. You might ask, how do I know I'm not hallucinating? Good question. Self-flattery is the oldest con. Here is a hard test. The kingdom within consistently reduces your fear of punishment and increases your capacity to act for the good when no one is watching. If your revelation makes you cruel, paranoid, or eager to dominate, it isn't the kingdom, it's your ego cosplaying as God. The true center does not need an audience to behave. It doesn't mortgage tomorrow to buy applause today. It grows quiet courage where panic used to live. Another boundary line. Within does not deny transcendence, it denies distance. The fact that the meeting place is in you doesn't shrink God to your size. It refuses the story that God is a rare gas kept in expensive containers. Transcendence without nearness breeds superstition. Nearness without transcendence breeds narcissism. The kingdom within is precisely the collapse of that false choice. The beyond that arrives here, or it isn't worth the breath to preach it. Why does this matter to you right now, beyond ideas? Because every system that monetizes your anxiety depends on fog at the center. When your center clears, you become very hard to herd. You become a poor customer for fear. You become the kind of person who can sit with suffering without selling it a promise it doesn't need. Institutions can work with that. Empires can't. So bank this definition. When you hear kingdom, refuse to picture a fence with a toll booth. Picture a lighted room inside your own awareness, where reality speaks without intermediaries, and where the next right action becomes obvious enough to cost you something. If a teaching helps you find and guard that room, it is your ally. If a teaching drags you out of it, into panic, performance, or permanent postponement, it is your enemy, even if it wears a halo. Hold that frame, because the moment you see it, you also start recognizing its echoes everywhere. The world's genuine wisdom traditions don't agree on everything, but they keep rhyming on this point. The door is nearer than your breath. In a moment, I'll show you how those rhymes expose 3 fatal mistakes we keep making about the kingdom, and why abandoning those mistakes is exactly what the censors didn't want you to do. If this were only one fringe voice, you could shrug and move on. But the same melody keeps surfacing wherever honest seekers refuse to rent their souls. You hear it in the Upanishads when the inner self and ultimate reality are spoken of as one. You hear it in the Sufi insistence on polishing the mirror of the heart until it reflects the beloved. You hear it in the Taoist refusal to grasp for what already flows through all things. Different languages, different histories, one refrain aimed at you. Stop searching for a door that is already inside your house. That isn't syncretism for its own sake. It's pattern recognition. When truth is near, traditions rhyme. And when truth is near, monopolies panic. The closer you draw to the meeting place within, the more external props look like training wheels, useful for a time, dangerous if you mistake them for the bike. You don't have to insult anyone's heritage to admit this. You only have to stop pretending that a rented ladder is the same thing as a sunrise. So why do we keep missing the kingdom when it stands in the room with us? Because you've been taught 3 mistakes, so often you call them humility. You were handed them as piety. You wear them like virtue. Drop them, and the floor rises under your feet. Mistake 1. Externalization. You were trained to look away from your own center for every signal that matters. You outsourced conscience to experts, wonder to spectacle, and discernment to the crowd's mood. Externalization keeps you dependent and easy to steer. If the kingdom is within, externalization is not reverence, it's blindness. You are not commanded to despise your own awareness. You are commanded to wake it up and use it. Mistake 2. Postponement. You were told to postpone aliveness until after death, or after initiation, or after approval. Postponement is the sales department of fear. It teaches you to bargain with your own breath. Behave now, receive later. But resurrection while you live is not motivational fluff. It is a deadline. If you cannot begin to live the truth you claim today, no ritual tomorrow will do it for you. Postponement flatters your cowardice and calls it patience. Don't buy it. Mistake 3. Paid access. You were taught, subtly or bluntly, that access to God rides on someone else's license. Pay the toll, money, obedience, belonging, and the gate might open. Paid access is the oldest lie in religion and politics. We stand at the door. If the kingdom lives in you, there is no door to sell. Community can confirm and correct. It cannot replace your seeing. The minute someone tries to bill you for your own interior life, you are looking at a business model, not a gospel. Notice what these mistakes accomplish together. Externalization makes you deaf to the voice in your chest. Postponement makes you fear your own present. Paid access makes you suspicious of your direct encounter with grace. Silenced, delayed, billed, you become manageable, and a manageable soul will kneel to almost anything that promises safety. You don't need to swing to the opposite excess. You don't need to spit on teachers, smash traditions, or posture as a lone genius drifting above history. You need to reverse the flow of authority. Let wisdom point you toward the center, not replace it. Let rituals train your attention, not own it. Let elders witness your growth, not lease it back to you. When the direction is right, outside confirming inside, you become the kind of person who can learn from anyone without surrendering the one thing you cannot delegate, your meeting place with God. At this point, the pushback writes itself. You'll hear, "This is Gnostic contempt for matter. This is elitism. This is rebellion against the church." Good. Say it out loud, because the next move is to take those charges head on, without flinching and without apology. You don't need platitudes. You need a clean blade. You are not being invited to hate the world. You are being invited to stop mistaking props for presents. You are not being invited into a club for clever people. You are being told the gate is inside you, which is the least elitist claim possible. You are not being invited to burn bridges. You are being asked to stop pretending the bridge owns the shore. Hold that clarity. The next minutes will cut through each accusation one by one, so you can hear what's really being defended when someone calls this dangerous. Spoiler, it isn't your soul, it's their seat. You've heard the charges. You despise matter. You're against the church. You're inventing a religion for elites. Where's the proof? Good. Line them up. We'll take them down in order and leave no place to hide. You despise matter. No, You stop worshipping props. You live in a world of flesh and dust, bread and breath. You work, you ache, you bury your dead, you hold your child. Nothing in the kingdom within asks you to hate any of it. The target isn't matter. The target is mediated authority that treats the physical world like a toll road to a distant heaven. When you hear within, you aren't being told to escape the world. You're being told to stop outsourcing your seeing of it. If your awakening makes you cold, cruel, or allergic to ordinary life, you didn't find the kingdom. You found an exit fantasy. The real thing makes you more present, not less. It makes you harder to panic and easier to love. Matter becomes more precious because you finally meet it without the fog. You're against the church. No, you're against monopoly on God. Communities can be schools of courage. They can test your discernment and sharpen your conscience. But the second a community claims ownership over access to God, it stops being a community and starts being a counter. Within breaks the cashier's window. It says, the meeting place is in you before a title can bless it. If that threatens an institution, the problem isn't your soul. The problem is their business model. Keep what is true, strong, and life-giving. Refuse the paywall. You don't need to burn a building to stop renting your conscience. This is elitist. Impossible. If the doorway is inside you, exclusion is mathematically impossible unless someone puts a guard between you and your own chest. Elitism is what happens when access is sold, graded, or branded. Within makes access universal and responsibility personal. The only people who feel excluded by that move are those who profited from standing in the middle. Where's the proof? In the only laboratory that cannot be outsourced, your life. The kingdom within is falsifiable in practice. Does it reduce your fear of punishment? Does it increase your capacity to act for the good when nobody is watching? Does it make you less dependent on applause and more allergic to manipulation? If the answer is no, you're dealing with a costume, not a kingdom. If the answer is yes, you've just learned more from one honest week than from a year of borrowed certainty. Historical footnotes can decorate that discovery. They can't replace it. Here's the uncomfortable truth behind the objections. They protect management. Despise matter tries to paint you as a world hater, so the vendor of blessings can sell you a better world later. Against the church tries to shame you back into line, so the counter keeps ringing. Elitist tries to flip the script by accusing the one claim that actually includes everyone. Proof tries to stall your conscience until you forget what you already know in your bones. You are not required to be rude. You are required to stop lying to yourself. When you recognize the meeting place in you, you stop being steerable by fear. You stop confusing obedience with dependence. You stop paying for access to a presence that arrives unbilled. And yes, systems that live on mediation will call that dangerous. They should. It is. So we come to the edge the censors never wanted you to reach. If the kingdom is not a place you buy into later, but a life that ignites in you now, then the last veil to tear is your identity. Not, you have the kingdom. Something harder, something final. Step over the line with me. Here is the line you've been circling. The kingdom is not next to you, above you, or waiting for you. The kingdom is you, not as a private deity, not as a fantasy of control, but as the meeting place where the divine addresses the world through a person. You are the locus. You are the site. You are the point of contact. Once you see that, the entire economy of mediation loses its leverage over your life. If the kingdom lives as your living center, then no one can sell you what you already are. Fear stops working as currency. Guilt stops working as a leash. The threat of exile from a place you never left becomes ridiculous, and the excuses evaporate too. You can't hide behind rituals you didn't do or permissions you didn't get. You know where the door is because you carry it. This is not a license to strut. It is a summons to responsibility. When you admit you are the meeting place, you also admit there is nowhere to dump your conscience. You can't outsource love to a program or outsource truth to a crowd. You can't pretend you didn't know what the next honest action was. The kingdom within you is not a mood. It is a standard. It increases your courage when no one is watching. It unmasks your convenient lies. It moves your life from performance to presence. Say it clearly. You are not waiting for access. You are hosting it. That means your words either carry light or smother it. Your choices either reveal the presence or advertise your fear. Your neighbor is not an obstacle to your holiness. Your neighbor is the mirror that proves whether your holiness is real. If you can't recognize the same spark in the face across from you, you didn't recognize it in yourself. You only admired a feeling. You will be told this claim is arrogant, dangerous, destabilizing. Good. It destabilizes the one thing that must fall. The fantasy that God is a rare gas stored in elite containers. It is not arrogant to stop renting your soul. It is not dangerous to end your dependence on fear. It is not destabilizing to move the altar from a counter to your heart. That is the only stability that lasts. So choose. Keep pretending the gate is locked, or admit you are the gate. Keep bargaining with absence, or stand where presence is already speaking. Keep paying middlemen, or spend your life on the work only you can do, telling the truth you have seen, giving the mercy you have received, acting from a center that doesn't need an audience to behave. Here is the formula in one breath. You are the place where the kingdom meets the world. Live from that, and every threat shrinks to size. Live from that, and love stops being a performance and becomes recognition. Live from that, and later dies. Now begins. If that sounds like heresy to you, argue with it, out loud, with reasons. If it sounds like the thing you knew before anyone trained you to doubt it, then stop waiting for a signature and move. I am not handing you a ladder. I am pointing at the floor under your feet. You don't need a password. You don't need a witness. You don't need to become someone else. You need to stop outsourcing the one meeting your life was built around. Dangerous? Yes, to anything that profits from your confusion. Holy? Yes, because holiness finally has a body and a voice. Yours.